Hi, Marcus here. I wanted to do a quick video of my rendition of out of Elmer's engines, his books. This is his chapter 11, and it's the radial engine that he designed and built, or we could say Elmer's number 11 radial engine. So this is my updated version of Elmer's number 11 radial engine. And now if you look at this picture right here, let me run this up here a little bit for you. If you look at this picture right here, Elmer's engine had square or rectangular blocks for cylinders in which the cylinder blocks incorporate the air from the rotary valve on the back of the engine to the top of the cylinder heads. So I think, as far as I'm concerned, radial engines it reminds me of aircraft engines, and they're air cooled, and so they needed to have fins. So I redesigned the cylinders so that they were fins for being basically air cooled. So then I had to build cut to length rods basically, and thread rods for the head bolts to hold the head on. And then as part of my modification, because now I use a different head, I had to port here on each one of these cylinders to provide air from the rotary valve here. So this is my air inlet, and this is my air exhaust. So I embellished a little bit here on this and made a unique little exhaust here for this. So there are some unique things that I did on Elmer's number 11 radial engine. So here's the blueprints, and I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna put a PDF file down here. I hope I can do that. But here's basically the radial engine, some cross sections of the radial engine, and you can see the boxy cylinders and the connecting rods and pistons. Bearing post assembly, the outer bearing post assembly right here. So that's the bearing assembly, outer bearing assembly, and then the plate. Then we have our flywheel here, and then our base, and then the vent plug for the crankcase. So we can drip a little bit of oil down here, and this is of course vented. This is the vent plug for the crankcase. So then next, here's the crankcase, and you can see the air ports right here, and this is where I had to come out of the crankcase, and I had to make sure that I got air to the top of the cylinder head right here. So air comes out of the crankcase and comes up, so it goes through here, through the rotary valve to the appropriate cylinder at the appropriate time. It goes through the head and then to the crown of the piston. So here's the rotary valve driven by the crankcase. Here's the valve housing right here. And then of course, here's his cylinder heads, and then I embellished a little bit on the cylinder heads. So, and then his cylinders, 3 required, and there's this rectangular box cylinder that I just thought was so unattractive that I wanted to do something a little different. And you can see here's the air line that runs from the crankcase all the way to the top of the cylinder head, and his was incorporated into the cylinder itself. So I had to come up with a different design for myself. Then we have basically, here's the connecting rod assembly, here's the rod hub assembly and the connecting rods and pistons. So you have to have 3 rods, 3 pistons, 1 connecting rod hub, and then here's the valve for the valve drive, or the crank for the rotary valve, and then there's your studs for the cylinder head to hold the cylinder head on, and then you have to have pins for the connecting the connecting rods and to the pistons and so on. Here's the wrist pins, and here's the crank assembly right here. So that was a little bit unique in itself. So what I wanted to do, so I'll point out some of these things. So to make a port here, so I cross drilled in the cylinder head and then provided a center hole on the inside, and then I had to plug this port now so I have air running up here. With Elmer's version, you really didn't have to do that. So anyway, cooling fins, my crankcase vented breather, so there's a port right here, a hole here, so it's vented to the crankcase, my exhaust, then the flywheel, outer bearing assembly, and then I embellished and put a little spinner here on it. The only thing that we could have done differently other than displaying it was I could have put a cut down prop or something on there so you could actually see it operate. Well, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hook up my air compressor here. I have a little airbrush air compressor. I don't have a boiler to run this on, but this outer bearing assembly, there's a little port here so you can drop oil in here, but I have this little airbrush compressor, and I'm going to go ahead and turn this on for you, and we're going to run this little engine. So that started on its own, so you can barely see that it's turning here, but it is running. So we're going to turn this down a little bit, lower the pressure here. I had the pressure up about 15. So we're going to slow it down. There we go. And now you can see my little set screw for you can see it barely turning here. So it's just a little bit hard to see it run because there's no external or external parts. I have seen some versions for this Elmer's engine where instead of having this back cover here, they actually made a divider section here and then put a plexiglass in cover so you could actually see the parts running inside the rotary valve at least. And so air comes in, goes through the rotary valve assembly, and I can feel the air coming right out my exhaust right here. So that's my rendition of Elmer's number 11 3-cylinder radial engine. So give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and again, thanks for watching, and have a nice day.